Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are cracking open the playbook of one of the most successful and I think maybe one of the most honest entrepreneurs out there today.
Mhm.
We're focusing on Emma Grede. You probably know her as the co-founder of Good American, a founding partner of SKIMS. I mean, she hasn't just built one company. She's orchestrated this portfolio that's gone from zero to a $7 billion valuation.
An absolutely staggering number.
Right. But this isn't just a story about, products and supply chains. This is really a blueprint for the mindset you need to execute at that kind of scale.
Exactly. And when we look at figures like greed, the business metrics are they're astounding. But what's so compelling for our mission today is the philosophy behind that acceleration.
Right.
Our source material is drawn from this really fascinating conversation where she went deep, not just on P&Ls and cap tables, but on the psychological armor and the often counterintuitive internal strategies you need to operate at that level.
And that's what we want to get into. Our sources take us way beyond the typical, sanitized success story. This is an honest look at the things she had to actively unlearn.
Yeah.
And the personal philosophy that enabled her to scale. This is the hard stuff, the decision-making framework.
Precisely. Our mission here is to extract that actionable wisdom, the surprising psychological shifts required for this kind of massive career acceleration. We've structured this around 3 core pivots that she talks about in depth.
Okay.
So first, how to conquer those paralyzing barriers of internal confidence and, external expectations. Second, the practical strategy of cultivating deep, specialized focus. And finally, facing the necessary cold, hard truth about balancing that monumental ambition with a personal life. We really want you, the listener, to walk away with tools, not just a bunch of inspirational quotes.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting where all massive success stories really begin, which is inside your own head. Because what struck me immediately was the sheer universality of the first struggle Greed talks about. It's the burden of worry. She just comes right out and admits that she spent her entire life worrying about what people thought of her, just constantly being her own worst critic.
And this is such a critical entry point because it normalizes the struggle. She wasn't talking about some phase she powered through 20 years ago.
No.
She even says she'd be lying if she said there weren't still parts of her that struggle with self-doubt and worrying about what people think now.
Even now, while running multi-billion-dollar companies.
Exactly.
That is the first major psychological nugget for you listening. Success does not eliminate the internal critic. It doesn't get rid of the worry about judgment. It just means you have to fundamentally change your process for managing it.
Right. It's a constant management challenge. It's not a one-time victory.
And the realization she credits for shifting that management is so powerful. It's this concept of, if not you, then who?
That phrase, if not you, then who, it's the turning point, isn't it? It's the moment you shift from relying on external validation to establishing true internal sovereignty. She realized so much of her energy was just dedicated to trying to prove something to others, to parents, to competitors, to society. And you just hit a stage where you realize that drive to prove is a massive energy drain.
It's a mental tax. And when you realize you don't really have anything like to prove, the only expectation that matters is your own. It's your ability to lay your head down at night and just feel good about the decisions you made that day.
That's the definition of personal integrity in a business context, really. It means meeting your ethical standards, your standard of excellence, your strategic goals, instead of constantly chasing what you think other people want to see.
And think about the bandwidth that frees up.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
All that cognitive and emotional energy that was previously just trapped in that validation feedback loop.
We have to talk more about how stifling the alternative is, though. Greed talks about the cost of silence. All those missed opportunities that happen specifically because of fear and self-restriction. She explicitly acknowledged times in her life where she just didn't speak up in meetings, or she didn't put herself forward for roles. She actively kept out of the conversation because she was trying to avoid criticism.
And it's not just a passive silence. It's an active decision, isn't it? It's self-limiting. It's all based on this often false assumption that you aren't ready or you're not as worthy as the other people in the room, which leads right to what she calls the myth of expertise.
The myth that everyone else knows better than you do, it's such a deeply pervasive feeling, right? Especially for younger people or, people from non-traditional backgrounds who are entering these high-level rooms for the first time.
They feel like they need a decade of credentials before they're allowed to have an opinion.
But Greed's point is that the older she gets, the more time she spends with these high-level leaders, investors, CEOs, founders, the clearer the picture becomes.
What is it, she says? No one knows anything. Every one of us. We're making it up as we go along.
It's so liberating, isn't it? That's such a critical realization, particularly when the stakes are high.
Hmm.
When you recognize that the experts running companies or countries are dealing with the same internal pressures, the same lack of certainty, it just dismantles the pedestal.
That awareness is the
Mhm.
foundational shift. It's what allows confidence to actually grow.
Right.
And that leads right to the final strategic move in this whole inner game, which is parking the fear. Greed recognized that fear, particularly the kind driven by, risk aversion or self-preservation,
Yeah.
just consumes this valuable finite energy.
She even calls it out as an inherently female thing sometimes. This tendency to resist risk purely to maintain the status quo.
Hmm.
If the only reason you're resisting a merger or a new hire or a new product line is to preserve what you have or avoid the perceived risk of failure, you have to measure the negative energy drain that fear is causing, the huge psychological sinkhole.
So the actionable step here for you listening is to do a kind of energy audit.
Hmm.
Where is your energy currently being consumed by fear? Is it in that internal argument about whether you should send that email or spend the money on that hire, or whether people will judge your new venture? If you can identify that defensive energy, you can redirect it into something measurable.
Like momentum, creation, focused work.
Exactly. You consciously decide to park the fear and convert that energy into action.
So, building directly on that internal struggle, that feeling that you aren't good enough, we have to pivot to the external realities. Because Greed was so clear that this psychological struggle is constantly being reinforced by things outside of us.
Societal factors.
Right. The barriers are really real. It's not just women holding themselves back. There are societal structures and standards that actively amplify these challenges.
And this brings us right to the research she cited on the confidence gap in job applications. I mean, it's a statistic that's so jarring, it forces you to reevaluate how you approach self-assessment.
Tell us what it is again.
Men, on average, will apply for a job if they feel they can do about 40% of what's listed.
40%.
Women, on the other hand, often won't apply even if they feel they can do 80%.
That 40 to 80% gap it's just staggering. It speaks to this fundamentally different internal threshold that's required to take an external risk. The man operates from a position of, oh, I'll learn the other 60%.
I'll figure it out.
While the woman operates from, I have to achieve near perfection before I'm even allowed to try.
And Greed illustrated this so well with her anecdote about hiring a Spanish or French speaker. She described the underqualified man who comes in, claims total fluency, he's a pro, even with limited abilities. He's just confident he can bluff his way through or learn on the fly.
Meanwhile, the woman who is essentially fluent maybe just needs a quick brush up on some technical vocabulary. She presents her ability with this massive cloud of doubt. I'm not so sure.
And that lack of self-promotion is often praised as humility in women, but in a high-stakes business environment, it's a career killer.
It really is.
That is the confidence gap made manifest. The nearly fluent woman restricts herself because of a fraction of doubt, while the man with limited ability accelerates his career by just exaggerating his competence.
So if you recognize the systemic issue, how do you actually address it, especially when you're in a position to build massive businesses? For Greed, the solution wasn't just, individual coaching. It was a deliberate structural decision.
Absolutely. She made a conscious decision to build her companies, Good American, SKIMS with women at the helm, in key leadership positions in critical decision-making roles, because she operates under this profound belief that statistically and behaviorally, women actually make better decisions.
So why does she believe that? I mean, if we dig into the studies that support that view, they often point to differences in risk assessment and collaborative management.
Right. Women-led boards are often cited as being less prone to excessive risk-taking, more thorough in their due diligence, better at long-term stability planning. Her decision wasn't sentimental, it was strategic.
She's moving beyond just complaining about a flawed system and is actively engineering a solution that bypasses those existing restrictive structures.
By valuing traits that are often downplayed by the conventional corporate world.
But even when you are successful, women can face this enormous, disproportionate criticism just for exhibiting the confidence you need to lead. This is what she calls the criticism trap.
This is where her personal story is so illuminating. She talked about a negative Twitter or X attack she received for speaking confidently on a business topic. And critically, on the very same day, a very prominent American businessman had a very similar, maybe even more aggressive online incident.
And the reactions were just worlds apart. Grede got this massive backlash, people demanding she apologize or retreat. Meanwhile, the businessman received millions and millions of likes and was praised for his assertiveness.
The double standard just couldn't be clearer, could it? When a man is loud or assertive or braggadocious, it's often celebrated as alpha behavior. When a woman exhibits the identical traits, it's often met with hostility, critiques about her tone, and this intense pressure to retreat or become demure.
But Grede's response to this pressure was to lean into the criticism. And this is the radical part of her strategy.
It really is.
She rejected the pressure to be likable. She rejected the pressure to conform to some quiet convention because she recognized that if she played the role of the apologetic, humble female founder, she would actually be holding other women back.
That refusal to conform is the core revolutionary message. Her decision was basically, I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm going to do me, be me. That radical honesty and refusal to apologize for her ambition becomes a vital pathway for other women.
Yeah, if she had apologized or quieted down, it would have just reinforced the restrictive convention for the entire ecosystem.
Exactly. By being herself unapologetically, she forces the system itself to adapt.
This is a powerful, high-stakes example of leading by example. She's using her platform to break the mold, understanding that her visibility inherently carries the responsibility of redefining what success looks like for the next generation of female founders.
So if the first two sections covered the internal psychology and the external barriers, this section is all about the actionable engine of massive growth. It's the mindset of excellence that acts as a force multiplier. And it starts with a concept a lot of people struggle with.
Which is?
Centering personal ambition.
Yes, the idea that you have to start with yourself. Grede was very clear. She centered her decisions around what was important to her. She never sacrificed her ambition. And this requires a kind of radical transparency about your own needs and desires. You have to go after it. You can't be shy about it.
Which leads us to that challenging concept you mentioned before we started, the idea of selfishness as a tool. She conceded that focusing intensely on yourself, being very clear about what you want and need, it sounds inherently selfish to a lot of people. But she strategically justified it, saying it is okay for a period in your life as a means to an end to achieve a monumental goal.
This requires a bit of scrutiny, though. For you listening, the question isn't just whether it's necessary, but how do you measure when that period is over? Doesn't this kind of strategic self-focus risk becoming, I don't know, permanent entitlement once you achieve massive success?
That's the critical challenge. Grede implies that the transition out of that period happens naturally once the foundational structure is built.
Right.
Once the business can run without your constant singular focus, it's a necessary, intense sprint to establish momentum.
Right.
If you don't take that time for self-propulsion, the goal may never even materialize, and then you risk resentment later. It's about setting a clear deadline for that sprint.
It's a temporary, intense deployment of self-focus needed for liftoff. But the most vital, practical piece of advice she shared transcends that ambition stage and applies immediately to anyone, anywhere.
The power of present excellence.
Yes.
This is where most people truly miss the opportunity for career acceleration. It's the necessity of being excellent in whatever job you're doing right now, regardless of whether you love it or whether it's your dream job.
She gave that unforgettable anecdote. When she worked in a deli, she was an amazing sandwich maker. She applied the same commitment to precision and speed in that deli job as she does now to making amazing jeans for Good American.
That level of focused application is magnetic. It shows a commitment to competence, not just to the outcome or the prestige of the job title. If you can be excellent, even at a casual temporary job, you're developing the muscle of execution.
And that's the rarest muscle in business. It attracts opportunity.
Which leads directly to the core philosophy for rapid career acceleration. The three most important words.
I'll do that.
That simple phrase is a mechanism for constant self-promotion and upskilling. It means you're constantly raising your hand, volunteering to take on projects outside your immediate scope, and putting yourself forward, even if you don't feel entirely ready.
It's the famous Richard Branson philosophy, isn't it? Say yes to an opportunity first, and then figure out how to do it afterward.
Exactly.
That vulnerability creates the pressure you need to step up and rapidly learn new skills rather than waiting for that mythical moment of perfect readiness that just never arrives.
And this requires immense internal drive, which brings us to her belief in visualization and manifestation. She talked about growing up watching Oprah and absorbing the concepts of gratitude, mindfulness, and visualizing success.
This speaks to the power of your internal narrative, especially when you couple it with her background. Despite coming from a place where excuses based on education or socioeconomic status might be common, she was raised with this unwavering belief that there were truly no limitations if she was willing to put in the work.
That strong foundation was the internal roadmap upon which her excellence was built.
Okay, now let's get to the most challenging piece of advice she offered.
The purpose versus passion debate.
Yes, the entire self-help industry screams, follow your passion. Greed's advice is the polar opposite. Don't look for your passion.
And her reasoning is brilliantly logical. Passion, by its nature, can be fickle. If something you're passionate about becomes difficult, which it will, the passion can easily fade.
So what's the alternative?
She says, find what you are good at and what gives you energy.
That flips conventional wisdom on its head.
It does. She argues that competence builds confidence, not the other way around. You can't be genuinely confident without competence. And competence is built by doing something you are willing to get really good at through deliberate practice. If you choose a path based on your competence and what energizes you, when things get hard, you don't lose the passion. You just double down on the effort because you're invested in excellence.
This transitions seamlessly into the discussion of laser-like focus as the ultimate force multiplier. Grede noted she doesn't know anyone who's truly successful who hasn't been unbelievably, unequivocally focused on something.
That depth of focus generates what she calls unbelievable unlocks. It's the Bruce Lee analogy we all know. Fear the person who practiced one kick 10,000 times, not 10,000 kicks once.
Right. True power comes from deep specialization.
Yet culturally, we feel this intense pressure to be generalists. We have to be visible on every social media platform, proficient in every software, pursue multiple side hustles.
And Grede just counters that cultural distraction explicitly. She says she does one thing really, really well.
She calls herself an excellent merchant. Her skill is understanding what people want to buy, how much they'll pay for it, and how to deliver it. And she just repeats that single action over and over again. Her focus is a competitive advantage in a world full of easily distracted generalists.
And that focus is what dismisses the overnight success myth. She confessed the honest truth. Achieving success doesn't make the work easier. In fact, she said she has never, ever worked harder than she does today. If you want to achieve great things, you have to accept that sacrifice is mandatory, and you must go deep on one thing to generate those exponential returns. This dedication to singular focus, being an excellent merchant or an amazing sandwich maker, it requires an incredible degree of strategic self-awareness. So our next crucial step is understanding that to specialize, you first have to know exactly what your strengths are so you can double down on them.
Grede talked about the utility of structured self-awareness tools, like various Strength Finders tests, and she emphasized the value of identifying those top 5 strengths. These tools don't tell you anything fundamentally new, but they make the unconscious conscious.
And the profound insight is realizing what you were just taking for granted. She recounted that story of the prominent businessman who used one of these tests and identified 4 of his top 5 strengths pretty easily, but his #1 strength strategy was a complete surprise to him.
That realization, that strategy was his core operating system. It just fundamentally shifted his world. When you can articulate your strength, I am extremely strategic or I am highly resilient, it immediately fills you with confidence. It explains why certain things in your life have worked and why others haven't.
It gives you an intellectual framework for your own excellence.
Right. And that clarity is vital because it directly critiques the pervasive societal pressure to fix your weaknesses. If you accept the premise that your focus is finite, and Grede absolutely confirms it is, then spending that finite focus on things you're weak at, just aiming for average competency, is a colossal waste of energy.
Okay, but this is a point that needs a little challenge. You used the relatable example of avoiding VLOOKUP functions. I appreciate the sentiment, but where do you draw the line between outsourcing a weakness and just fundamental strategic incompetence?
That's a fair question.
If your strength is high-level strategy, don't you still need to be sort of competent in, say, finance or data analysis to accurately interpret the reports your team is giving you?
That is the essential friction point. You need to understand the language of your weakness, but you don't need to master the execution of it.
Okay, so I need to be able to read and challenge a financial report, but I don't need to spend 20 hours a week inputting the data myself.
Exactly. Greed is telling us to spend the time developing the thing that makes us phenomenal, not the thing that makes us merely adequate. The focus must be on maximizing returns. Becoming phenomenal at one thing yields exponential returns. Becoming adequate at 5 weaknesses yields, linear minimal returns.
That is the strategic difference between building a $7 billion company and a $7 million company.
And that leads directly to the mandatory next step, understanding what you are horrendous at and deliberately building a team to compensate.
She was brutally honest about her own profile here. Her strengths are unbelievable focus, resilience, and an intense work ethic. But she admitted to being super impatient, not just a little bit, but really bad.
So in a high-growth, massive-scale company, how do you structurally manage being super impatient? You can't let impatience dictate multi-million-dollar deals.
Right. So her solution is organizational design.
It's not just hiring someone who is patient, it's creating a filter. She surrounds herself with people who naturally possess high patience, deep attention to detail, and a commitment to process. These team members serve as the implementation layer,
They slow down the execution just enough to ensure precision.
without losing the momentum generated by her impatience.
Right.
That's the key takeaway for our listeners who are in leadership positions. Success is not achieved alone. It requires radical self-honesty to define your gaps, the skills, the personality traits, the necessary perspectives, and then investing heavily in surrounding yourself with people who possess those precise compensating traits.
It's a strategic organizational decision, not just a hiring choice.
Let's move to the topic that high-achieving women are asked about far more often than men: balance. Greed highlighted this massive, disproportionate question, even rhetorically mentioning that no one ever asks a prominent male CEO about balancing his life with his, numerous children.
It's a societal double standard that has to be called out. Because the question itself implies an inherent failure if a woman is succeeding wildly in her career. It creates a motherhood penalty that men simply do not face. And Greed addressed this by reframing her entire relationship with work, specifically to her children.
She realized that with her first 2 kids, she was trapped in what she called the cycle of apologies, constantly saying, sorry, I'm leaving, sorry, I'll be back late, sorry, I missed that.
Right, and that perpetual apology creates a narrative for her children that she doesn't actually like what she's doing.
So the shift she made was profound and intentional. She stopped apologizing. She started openly expressing how much she loves work and has an amazing time. She frames work not as a burden, but as a source of energy and fulfillment.
And this completely removed the guilt and shame from her professional success.
And the psychological impact on her kids was immediate. When one of her daughters apologized that Greed had to leave for a business trip, Greed corrected the narrative. She said, I'm going to have an amazing time.
And the daughter's response, oh, okay, have an amazing time, it just validated the whole strategy.
It creates this powerful narrative that encourages children to pursue their own ambitious dreams unashamedly. It reframes work not as some necessary evil that steals time, but as an exciting, fulfilling pursuit that provides resources and happiness.
And this aligns with a deeper truth about parental presence. I think we've convinced ourselves culturally that physical quantity equals affection and quality. But if a parent is always physically present, but is stressed, unhappy, distracted, or, constantly over-entertaining out of guilt, the quality of that connection suffers massively.
It's a crucial distinction. Quality presence over sheer quantity. We have to challenge the cultural metric that demands constant physical attendance if that presence is hollow or driven by guilt. Being truly engaged for 30 minutes can outweigh hours of just passive proximity.
So to manage these impossible expectations, Greed did a crucial exercise, defining her own non-negotiables. This involves drawing a sharp line between your internal standards and external pressures, specifically the pressures created by social media perfection.
This is such a vital exercise for every listener. You have to ask, what are my standards versus what are other people's standards?
What were hers?
Greed's internal non-negotiables included attending the truly important events, plays, graduations, and scheduling non-negotiable personal breaks, like a girls' trip once a year.
But the pressure points, like making Instagrammable lunchboxes or hosting elaborate holiday dinners, they just weren't on her list. So she outsourced them or eliminated them or just lowered the standard to a point of effortless efficiency.
And once you establish that internal-owned, non-negotiable list, everything else becomes flexible. But even with that radical clarity, she emphasizes the ultimate reality check.
Which is,
The idea that anyone has got it all down is just fake.
life is simply a series of trade-offs. If you see her on a stage accepting an award, it means she missed family dinner that night. She made a strategic decision for that day, and she gave something else up. That honesty is absolutely essential for normalizing high achievement.
Which is why she committed to the final, most radical part of this section: stop lying. She recognized the collective professional facade of effortless perfection was just damaging the entire ecosystem of women in business.
She stopped hiding the difficulty, the reliance on nannies and support staff, or even having to ask a competitor for help when she needed it.
She was radically honest, sharing specifics, like only doing school drop-off twice a week, that's on a good week. This willingness to be real serves the larger purpose of redefining what's expected of other ambitious women and men.
It breaks the cycle of comparison. When that facade crumbles, other people realize that their struggles are normal, and that asking for help is a sign of strategic strength, not personal failure. This radical commitment to honesty and dismantling the perfection facade led directly to her new venture, Aspire, which is her platform aimed at scaling mentorship. She recognized that by appearing constantly successful and, unattainable, she had inadvertently become part of the problem she was trying to solve.
The intent of Aspire is critical. It's twofold. First, to tell the hard, honest truth and avoid the toxic positivity that just plagues the entrepreneurial world, that idea that you just need to meditate and visualize success.
Right.
And second, it's to give people tangible, non-abstract tools to build their own lives.
Yeah.
Bridging the gap between her massive success and the everyday person who feels overwhelmed and just stuck at the starting line.
The power of her philosophy was demonstrated so beautifully in real time during the conversation through that live pitch example.
Kate Wood.
Kate Wood, a woman who had opened 2 restaurants while having twins and was pitching a TV show idea called Stage.
And Kate's immediate courage to stand up and pitch, that immediately reinforced lesson 1. Courage and the I'll do that mentality.
Absolutely.
That decision to overcome self-preservation and put herself forward was the truly big and important first step. She did the thing she was afraid of doing.
But the truly actionable advice Grede gave Kate was lesson 2. Test and learn. Don't wait for the big magical pitch, the massive budget Netflix deal. Start small.
She advised taking the high-concept TV idea and just scaling it way down. Try it with a friend instead of a celebrity, film it locally on an iPhone, and iterate rapidly.
This is the modern application of a minimum viable product, or MVP, applied to services and content. The media climate today allows you to figure things out on YouTube, or an Instagram series, or a small local pilot, before sinking massive resources into a concept that might not work.
So the ultimate advice is still the starting block. You just gotta start, because waiting for that magical day when the budget is right or the celebrity signs on might mean it never comes. Acceleration comes from momentum, and momentum only starts with the first step, no matter how small or imperfect.
And that advice just hits home for so many people who have been stalled by perfectionism. You shared your own personal anecdote earlier. 7 years ago, you pitched a TV show idea to major networks and got rejected repeatedly.
And that failure, that necessity, led directly to the creation of the successful content platform we run now.
So the starting block wasn't the TV deal. It was accepting the rejection and immediately pivoting to a small, contained, cost-effective platform where you could test the ideas and iterate based on real feedback.
The moment you start testing, you stop fearing failure and you start moving towards competence.
So what does this entire deep dive from internal fear to external success mean for you, the learner? We have synthesized this journey from internal struggle to massive career acceleration.
And the most powerful insights we can take away are really threefold. First, competence has to precede confidence. Stop chasing abstract passion. Instead, focus on what you are undeniably good at. Get excellent at it through deliberate practice, and the confidence will naturally follow.
Second, self-awareness is a strategic tool for organizational design. You have to know your weaknesses, even the uncomfortable ones, like impatience or a lack of detail focus, so you can outsource those gaps. Success is built by surrounding yourself with compensating partners and teams.
And third, radical honesty is mandatory, especially when you're discussing ambition and success. Embrace the truth that life is a series of trade-offs. Being honest about those choices to yourself, to your family, and to your network is essential for your mental health and for redefining achievable standards for everyone else.
So we encourage you to identify one area this week where you are currently letting others' standards dictate your decisions. Is it the perfect lunchbox? Is it your refusal to ask for expert help? Is it your hesitation to speak up in a meeting? Identify that standard, own it or eliminate it, and free up that energy.
And let's end with this provocative thought, drawn directly from Grede's reflection on success. She noted that when a major goal is finally achieved in 6 months, there is no sense of meaning and purpose by the time it happens. She emphasizes that fulfillment is often found not in the distant relief of reaching a finish line, but in the daily, relentless application of excellence and focused work.
So ask yourself, if your biggest goal today suddenly vanished, where would you find your sense of meaning tomorrow?